Okay, welcome everybody to this breakout session. This one we're going to look at in terms of trusted relationships with professional registration, people working in different types of industries. So we've got a bit of a diverse panel here. I'll just give a bit of background on myself first of all, because not everybody may recognise what AWE is. I know one or two in the audience do, because one or two I've talked with before, but not everybody does. So AWE, Atomic Weapons Establishment. So we're part of the nuclear industry. In terms of skills gap, I think as I was saying to Jane, we don't have a skills gap, we have skills hanging. I mean, we are desperately in constant improvement mode, and our policy at the moment is to get out as much as possible into the university sector, because a lot of people don't know who they are. Don't know about us until you talk to them. So yeah, ours is massive, and I've got lots of personal thoughts about why that's so bad in the UK as well, but maybe that's for something this afternoon. So, as it says up there, I'm head of profession for chemistry materials, originally a chemist, but I've wandered between different functions over the years. So, chartered chemist, chartered scientist, chartered engineer. I'm one of the two people on site who are both chartered scientist and chartered engineer. And that's because of composite work I've done over the years as well. Management these days, head of profession, a lot of recruitment, a lot of training from apprentices to direct hires at PhD level. So we're going to look in this session at this issue in terms of what role that professional registration can play in trusted and professional science. It's always been there, but is it more important now? There's a lot of issues out there, whether it's nuclear, whether it's COVID, whether it's the future of energy, wind, HS2, whatever you want. Scientists and engineers are there, and how do we know that we trust them? It's massive in our industry, and it should be massive in a number of others as well. As it says in my brief, professional registration is not compulsory. I was part of a team on site rewriting job descriptions. We had more job descriptions than we had people, so it was a bit of a flag to do something about it. We moved to job profiles, and I was one of the people on that group who wanted to make it mandatory in certain roles that we had professional registration. Technical authorities, a term that we used, I could see why they weren't chartered. We were challenged, we were pushed back. It's desirable on all our job profiles now, but I think that future trend will make it mandatory at some stage for certain roles. So, I think that's enough. I could grab it for the full hour here, so I'm going to introduce the people that we've got on this panel who kindly agreed to debate this topic this morning and give some introduction to their own industries and their own perspectives. So first of all, Rob. Rob's a professional registration manager at the Institute of Water, and here we're talking about how professional registration empowers individuals and supports their professional development. Dave Stone, Chief Scientist at the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, will address the importance of professional registration of trusted science within an important public body. And last but not least, Julie Wilson, who's the Associate Director of the Wellcome Sanger Institute and has recently become an employed champion for the Science Council. Welcome. And she'll be talking the work of the Institute about why major research institute values professional registration. So without further ado, I will hand over to Rob to kick us off.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me loud and clear? Even better. Super. I feel a bit of an interloper here today. I'm a chartered environmentalist. But that said, I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't chartered. And that's really what I wanted to try and talk about over the next 8 minutes. I'm going to spend 3 minutes talking about one of my favourite subjects, which is me. 3 minutes talking about the sector I work in, which is water. and a couple of minutes talking about the institute I work for, the Institute of Water. So, as I said to begin with, I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't chartered. And I realize that seems a bit of a leap of faith, but bear with me. For those of you that may have read the short biography in that little on the online version there, I have often described my career as a verb rather than a noun. This is my 4th career to date. I started off after I left school as a sailing instructor, and then I worked as a chef for 15 years. I worked across Scotland, America, France, Spain, and eventually, after one of those epic cigarette breaks in the restaurant, in a wee alley behind, we asked each of us what we'd do if we won the lottery. And I said, I'd like to go to university, because you always hear about broke students, right? So I went to university. My degree is in environmental history. I was one of the first to do that particular honours degree. And it was a history of how people have used the planet. And to do it and to understand it, it was important to have known the political, economic and social histories of Western Europe, because that's what we're based on, together with understanding how disease functions and how disease can be transmitted through trade routes, what fuels trade routes, whether that's exploitation of resources, for example. From there, I worked as a volunteer in nature reserves, often in the middle of nowhere, counting bees, butterflies, shooting occasional deer and pulling them off the hill, and cooking them, has to be said. And that was to reduce grazing pressure and increase natural regeneration of trees. I learned how to use GIS and GPS in those areas, often mapping through dendrochronology, trees which had been planted 50 years previously, and then using computer tools to understand predation rates of insects. Through that, I accidentally got a job working as a biodiversity data officer for the Scottish Wildlife Trust. And in talks like this in London, I managed to alienate 50% of my audience at any point when I'm just talking about biodiversity and data in the same sentence. Through that, I then was headhunted to digitize water mains for a water company. And then 15 years later in technical consultancy, I ended up with this job here. The route to registration, though, was, as with my career preceding it, atypical. I knew from the work that I was doing and the colleagues I was with, who were engineers and scientists and possibly some environmentalists, that my degree in environmental history qualified me on paper for nothing. But I also knew from the work that I'd been as a head chef, managing and organizing a staff of 25, 350-seat restaurant, that I had skills that I couldn't articulate. I knew the standard that I worked to was quite high, because customers kept on coming back, right? And I found the route to registration through the Institute of Water through a couple of conversations. I became registered as a chartered environmentalist in 2013. And at that point, what that did, only 5 years into the water sector, was really cement what reputation I wanted to achieve and where I wanted to stand. It was not a final point. It wasn't a destination. It was a starting point, because that gave me instant credibility to everybody that I spoke to. Now, to be fair, it was only 2-3 years ago I started using the chartership as part of my LinkedIn title. I forgot that actually I could do that. It's one of the difficulties these days of moving from digital or from paper to digital. So, to recap, I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't chartered. I wouldn't be standing speaking to you if I didn't have the CPD opportunities to speak in public, overcome my nerves, trying to find the stairs instead of the lift, and sit and stand. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And thank you for the family of being registered. So, I should have had that on first. I just have a few slides about the Institute. I'm going to talk around it. I'm going to keep that one up just now because all of you in this room are part of the water sector. Who here didn't flush a toilet this morning? The Institute of Water is often described as a family because we pride ourselves on being comparatively non-hierarchical, and that we have a family feel to all our conferences. We talk with each other. We have the same type of, different type of name badges. So we have our names, but not our job title when we go and speak to conferences. And within the water sector, one of the incredible things once you become a member of it, or part of it, and even a part-time worker, is it is myriad. It affects our lives in every facet of modern living. And as I alluded to earlier, in terms of flushing the loo, we're also drinking the stuff too. It's really good for you. The water sector over the next 10 years is facing an absolute crisis in terms of manpower, climate change, regulatory change, public perception, and ultimately trust. And one of the things that both registration but also the family that I belong to engender is how to articulate what trust means and what it looks like. And that's what registration does for every aspect of those who are in our sector. So I'm going to flip through a few here because I actually asked for 3 slides and I got 6. That's the one I want just now. The Institute of Water is got 3 disciplines at the moment. And each of those 3 disciplines, we have 3 grades, technician through to chartership. For those of you who don't know us, and I'll probably flip back too, but I won't. The Institute was founded in 1946. And it was founded as a collaborative institute between water officers. And that was people who were essentially what we would call blue collar now, technical workers who were in charge of districts, and they wanted a way to communicate between companies and between areas of the country rather. We're all facing the same problems. How do we deal with and manage them? So for the first 40, 50 years of our existence, we were a technical institute. And over the last probably 25 years, we've grown to encompass all grades of registration. What we're recognizing now, though, is in the 700K downstairs of technicians which are missing from this sector. I was at a Science Council meeting not so long ago, and I felt it important to enunciate that our sector cannot function without technicians. Every time you see a burst in the street, or you see someone wanting to read a meter, you need to send someone with a van to open a lid and do it safely. So technicians are critical to us. Over the next, between now and 2030, we are, across the water sector, likely to use 50,000 workers. 50,000 people of often 30 years experience are going to leave the sector, and that's due to retirement. In addition to that, I mentioned climate change. Just this year in Scotland today, there's a storm that's got red warnings being issued for the first time in quite some time. These weather patterns are changing to become more extreme and more random. And to manage and deal with that, we need capable infrastructure, but we also need resilient people who can adapt to change. And I use me careering through life as a good exemplar of how to manage change on a personal basis. But I've also, to get to this role, been a mentor. I've mentored 25 people to achieve registration before I took this role on. And that is absolutely essential in terms of being able to grow the skills of speaking like this, of having some water and talking downstairs, walking up to a complete stranger and saying, "Hi, I am, this is what I want to talk about, and I think it'd be good to find out more about X, Y, and Z." It's a skill, and it's good to learn, it's good to be able to show it. I'm going to wind up just now because you're not giving me time, and I could keep on speaking until I'm interrupted, just as you do. In saying that if you've got a phone, please take it out. If you're not a member, join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thanks for keeping to time. Dave,
in my
all
head.
yours.
Set me up to fail for a start. Keep to time. Right. Ooh. Here we go. Fantastic. Right, so good morning, everyone. A little bit like Rob, actually. I very rarely use my post-nominals, but I thought it was appropriate to do so today. And yeah, I'm going to do a bit of reflection on what it means to be a trusted science professional and a trusted workforce. So I promised Adam I'd give a plug for the Institute of Environmental Sciences, of which I'm a fellow. And it was also through that institute that I was encouraged to get my chartership as well. And so I owe a lot to the institute for encouraging me to take these things seriously, but also for helping me recognise the value of registration and the role that can play in the workforce for which I stand. So I'm going to finish with the end point. So like lots of modern superhero movies, this is the sort of final bit. So actually, why is professional registration important? It's about trust, it's about impact, and it's about effectiveness. And if you take nothing else away from today, please remember those three words. So I'm going to do a quick canter through what JNCC is. Duncan's already said the acronym, but I'll spell it out again. Very rarely use the full thing. It's the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, and we're an arm's length, non-departmental public body. So part of that sort of sector that Dame Angela was describing that isn't quite civil service, but relatively close to it. But as an independent arm's length public body, it's important that we give independent, objective advice. I'll say a little bit about what we do, the sort of advice that we're involved in, and then some little reflections then on why CPD is important to us and registration. Right, so this is the sort of, what is JNCC? Because we're relatively small. Well, we are small. It's 300 odd people. We're the only statutory nature conservation advisor across the whole of the UK. So we work with all the devolved administrations and Whitehall in its UK remit as well, because environment is a devolved policy area. We also work with the overseas territories, which can lead to some nice overseas trips, if you're lucky. I haven't managed any yet particularly. And we work with the Crown dependencies. We also work with many of the international agreements, the multilateral environmental agreements, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity. So we work in that arena as well. So what we do, so I've mentioned the MEAs. Actually, we advise on 23 different MEAs, multilateral environmental agreements. So that's a big portfolio that covers everything from global biodiversity to aspects of deep sea mining. Our workforce covers a range of skill sets, actually. So I've just stuck some pictures up there. So we've got terrestrial ecologists, marine ecologists. We produce a lot of official statistics, so we've got analysts in that space. We have, one of our biggest assets, other than our people, is the data that we hold. We hold most of the environmental monitoring data for the UK within the natural sphere. So data scientists, data analysts are critical to us. We do loads of stuff with Earth observation. So it's a broad range of scientific and technical skills. As an organisation, relatively small workforce, we produce roughly 100 primary research papers every year. Then, X amount of, what people often refer to as grey literature, but then there's the advice piece, which is the bulk of our work. So what we're about, really, is bringing together best environmental evidence to inform decisions that shape the natural environment, the way it's used, the interventions nationally, locally, and globally. And for us as an organisation, we measure our impact by ensuring, by seeing that set of decisions and making sure that that direction leads towards thriving nature. So that's, we've got the mission up there. That's what we're about. That's the direction, the push. We're science-based. Evidence is what we're about. And in order to give that advice, we have to be trusted. We have to be trusted by ministers. We have to be trusted by officials within government administrations. We have to be trusted by policymakers in global organisations, such as the UN. And when all these things come together, that trust, that sound science, that enables us to deliver our statutory responsibilities quite effectively. So we've got this workforce, we've got this ambition. So I push quite hard for my colleagues, of which probably 70% would come under the banner of scientists. So we are a majority science organisation to engage in the CPD, focus on things like registration. And why do I do that? It is part of building this trust. It's this credibility that we require in order to have the impact that we want. And what comes out of registration and CPD are the standards, that recognition of quality and integrity and an ethical approach to work. So it's that independence and that objectivity of our advice. The CPD element, I think, is really about maintaining our skills. We've all left, many of us in this room will have graduated at some point, right? And on that day you think, I know everything there is to know about plant ecology in my case. 5 years down the line, you realise that actually you only just scratched the surface of the subject. And there's still a lot to learn. And we heard Dame Angela say this morning, she's active in that process of lifelong learning. I admire her passion to get deep into machine learning. It's something I've steered clear of to a degree. But other advantages of getting involved in institutes from a member perspective are that you get some really useful focused material that keep you abreast of changes that are happening in the sphere that you're interested in. And so I get a really good magazine from the Institute of Environmental Sciences that's caused me to go off then and do deep dives into particular areas that I didn't know very much about, or I thought, actually, that's really changing quite rapidly. So the other thing then is to reflect on why this stuff's important to me. As chief scientist in an organisation of 300 people, I'm technically the head of profession for within the organisation for government science and engineering profession that Dame Angela spoke about this morning. First of all, it's about modelling behaviours. So I ask a lot of the people in my organisation in terms of what they do, the standard I expect. And so if I'm asking that of others, I need to hold myself to account as well. And I need to be held to account by an institute that will wrap me over the knuckles if I am straying outside the bounds of professionalism. So that's important. And I also model that in terms of CPD as well, and what I encourage others to do. And that's about maintaining my knowledge. I think importantly, I showed a range of activities that we're involved in, a range of different aspects of science. I can't know everything about all of those, but one of the things that maintaining my personal development enables me to do is to ask the awkward questions, or to ask the right questions, and not to just necessarily blandly accept stuff as it comes through. You know, inevitably I get a lot across my desk that is for signing off. You know, lots of official statistics. I need to be able to interrogate that and probe and help others improve as well. And I've stuck 2 pictures on this slide because Bob spoke about his personal journey. So, burning on deep peat, licensing of game bird releases, 2 of the most awkward and difficult conversations I've had in my 30-year career. Sitting in a room with ministers and secretaries of state that really didn't want that to happen. But the science was saying, you really need to take a decision here, Secretary of State. Because I like to think that they trusted me, the evidence wasn't in question. The thing that was in question became, what do we do about it? And that enabled us to have some really constructive and useful discussions, even though it was a really difficult issue to tackle. So that's it. It's about trust, it's about impact, it's about effectiveness from my perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Julie, would you like to step up to the microphone next?
So thank you, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Julia Wilson, I'm the Associate Director of the Wellcome Sanger Institute, which is a genomics research institute near Cambridge. And I'm going to talk more about my organisation's journey into professional registration, which actually came about I won't say very recently, but we became much more focused on professional registration when we joined the technician commitment that you will have heard Kelly Veer talking about earlier today. And we knew we had so many skilled technical staff at the Institute. We did have some scientists that were professionally registered, but very few, and they had to do it off their own bat. And so in 2018, when we signed up to the technicians commitment, we knew we needed to build and empower and support that Sanger tech community. And we actually had to start by defining what technicians were at Sanger, because it was a bit of a dirty word, and some people who work in computational biology didn't see themselves as technicians. So we use technical experts, skilled technicians, expert advisors as our terminology to encourage that cadre of scientists to feel included in the tech commitment banner. We actually knew to be credible to that community, it had to be led by our technical community. It's no good being led by me standing at the front saying, yeah, it's really great, you should do this. You know, it needed credibility, it needed to get that buy-in from our staff. So we created a dedicated role to work on our technician commitment activities. And we had a principle that all of our work should be, all of the steering committees and the working groups should be led by Sanger technicians, and to get that credibility and buy-in. So who were we looking at? Well, about half of our workforce, about 700 people, are technicians or technical experts. And it's a very diverse range of job families, including wet lab, computational, and sort of software developers as well. So why do we as an institute want to have professional registration? Well, we know we are one of maybe 2 or 3 organizations in the world that can do genomics research at the scale that we do. And so we know that delivering our science and our scientific mission and remaining at the forefront of genomics really depends on the work of our technicians and technical experts. We've heard a huge amount today about recruitment and retention of staff. Obviously, I'm in the Cambridge area, which is very overheated. There's a lot of demands, there's a lot of competition. So we're really thinking about the recruitment and retention of our scientific staff. We also know that we have to win their hearts and minds. Why would you come and work at Sanger and not AZ or GSK or the university or Altos, or even go and work in finance tech? So we're offering, so we say, we can offer this, we can offer you enhanced careers. We're mapping out career routes in the organisation, what you can do with, coming in with one set of skills, how you can traverse the organisation and get to where you want to be and continuously learning. And I think for me, probably it's the integrity of our science, and it's our reputation as well that goes with having professional registration. If we're saying that spelling mistake in your genome causes that cancer, we need to know that that science is absolutely robust. If we're going to partner with a pharmaceutical company on a discovery we've made, we need to know that that is absolutely watertight. And we also know that, by training our scientists and registration with our scientists, they have that integrity, and they will speak up or speak out if they feel that, that our science isn't right, and that's vitally important to us. Then we talk about training of our skilled technical experts, but it's actually this cohort of our scientists are actually the ones doing the training. They're training the PhD students that are coming in. They're training the postdocs that are still green around the ears when they come in. It's the technicians and the registered scientists that are training that next generation of workforce. Clearly, we do train them as well. We've got, linking back to the innovation piece this morning, we have what we call startup school, where staff can be trained in entrepreneurial thinking. And we have a huge amount of our registered scientists and our technical experts attending startup school, because they can see by developing entrepreneurial skills, or they've seen methods in the lab that they think could be innovative, or they could be commercialized potentially. So that our registered scientists are going through that and having that entrepreneurial mindset that they're bringing to our discovery science as well. I would also say, I feel that our registered scientists and other scientists become ambassadors for the Institute, but also for science. Often, being a registered scientist isn't just about having scientific skills, it's about other aspects of the role of being a scientist as well. So it may be going to a science festival and talking to publics about the science that we do, becoming an ambassador. Sometimes they can reach some of the harder to reach aspects of the community. We had some great and build public trust. COVID would be an example of that, where some of our registered scientists and our skilled technical experts who were providing data in real time to the government about the variants that we were isolating, having that credibility and ability to talk in the community about what we were finding really did help to build that public trust, particularly in genomics, which can be slightly, you're reading my DNA, or what are you going to find me at a crime scene. So I find that registration of our scientists really builds that credibility as well. And just to show you, I'm just going to very quickly zip through. As I said, all of our work on our working groups has to be led by our scientists and our registered scientists. So this is the group that leads our professional registration. They coordinate the coaching, the mentors, they decide what the professional registration route should look like at our organisation and what we need to provide to help them do that. and you don't need to know what the program cycle is, but it involves coaching and mentoring and one-to-one support. But we've iterated over time on the feedback of our cohort that are undergoing that journey. And we've added longer mentoring and one-to-one coaching, added group coaching, because the problem with this is we struggle to scale it. So it's how we can develop this and put the plan into action and get the scientists who wish to be registered through and supported. And then what Duncan mentioned earlier, we became delighted to say we became an employer champion earlier this year, which was, a lot of effort had gone into that, a lot of pride, and we took the time to celebrate. And we have many registered scientists now since we embarked on this journey. We've still got many, many more who want to join the next cohorts. And we've also lost some of our registered scientists. They've gone on to great new opportunities in our sort of life sciences ecosystem. And that's brilliant as well. We expect our PhD students and postdocs to come to Sanger, to work there for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and then move on. And I'm really pleased that our registered scientists are also moving on, taking the Sanger way of thinking into the rest of the community. So some people may see that's a downside if we're upskilling our scientists, that they can move on, but I think it's fantastic. And then just thank you for listening, and I'm happy to share more about our journey.
Moving over here so I'm closer to the microphone. I'll stand up for a minute actually anyway. Thank you for those 3 great introductions. We're moving into the question and answers now, but I'll throw a couple that came into my mind to start off with. One, fairly briefly, but could somebody take it up and compare and contrast that traditional qualification route against the registration?
I'm quite happy to speak. Is this working?
I believe so.
Yep. Okay. So, as I explained in terms of my own journey, I'm just listening to myself and back and forth. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Yes. Okay. I came to university late, and I was part of a mature student cohort. And one of the things that really struck me at the time was the different careers that had come together to study at university at that time. That's one answer. But the second answer is more real, I suppose, in some respects, insofar as the people who leave school with no qualifications are often in that situation for reasons that we can't understand at the time, and maybe they don't understand the choices that they've been given. And so to be able to reach out and say that there's hope and there's opportunities in a world that they probably never dreamed about, just by enlisting on an apprenticeship course or having an open day, going to an open day and finding something that appeals at a very simple and very basic level is enough to get people started and down a route of bringing bringing knowledge, application of that knowledge, communication and professionalism together, and those are the 4 elements of registration. Does that answer your question?
That certainly does.
Okay.
And I would completely agree.
Thank you.
We
Okay.
do.
Yeah. So I think from my perspective here, we've started to look at this, and it can. So Duncan, you said you've got to avoid in terms of the lack of skills. The environmental sectors in this very similar space really struggle to recruit people with the skills that we're looking for. And I don't intend this as a criticism of academia, but people that come out of the academic sector quite often need an awful lot of additional work in order to get them ready for life in the public sector. And so we as an organisation have started to go down the apprenticeship route. And one of the other things that's really bringing with it, actually, is something that Rob alluded to there. Actually, it's about inclusion. It's about bringing in a different range of life experiences and perspectives that really can help in the work that we do. And to be able to inject that into advice to governments we've found to be incredibly valuable. So it's still early days for us, but we're already seeing the benefits and the values of that. And on the same sort of path, we've also in the throes of developing a youth council as well, to provide that different sort of lens and inputs. Do you want to add?
Yeah. So I would say some of the biggest challenges, sounds really odd, doesn't it? Some of the biggest challenges we work on can only be tackled by having multiple people from different backgrounds and disciplines tackling them. So we do a lot of work with primary schools, secondary schools, trying to show that, you know, scientists don't just look like middle-aged white men. Sorry. Yeah, if you ask them to draw a scientist, you don't really get to. And they think it's great to come around and see that the scientists are sitting in a cafe chatting away, and that's life as a scientist. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Just a second one, and this is a yes/no answer on two sub-questions for each of them. And I'm picking up on one of the words that was used multiple times. I lost count. Trust. Could we ever oversell trust as scientists? And the second part of it is, are we trusted enough as scientists? And it's just a yes and no to each one.
So the first one, can trust be oversold? Yes, definitely. What was the second question, Sam?
Are we trusted enough as a scientist?
I'm not qualified to answer that, literally.
So on the first point, yes. Are we trusted enough? I think we are, because we need to be challenged. So 100% trust would be inappropriate.
I think trust is easily lost, and we have lost it at times. If you do public perceptions of scientists in academia are trusted. If I took my same role to a pharmaceutical company, I wouldn't be trusted. And so I think there's a lot more we need to do, that we're an ecosystem, we all work together. You don't get fantastic drugs in hospital if we don't. It starts from discovery all the way through the translation pipeline.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping short on that. Okay, before it's open to the floor on questions.
Double mic. Fantastic. Julia mentioned COVID. I think COVID is quite an interesting example, because we all lived through it a few years ago, and there were several phases to the kind of trust element of how people kind of thought about the science. And maybe a little bit before COVID, there was a slight denigration of expert advice in government circles, and then the crisis hit, and suddenly they realised that, you know, scientists needed to be front and centre. And, you know, incredible to think that there was scientists on TV every night at 6 p.m. and the nation was listening to them. But at the end of COVID, you know, given that it hasn't actually ended, but at the end of the kind of lockdown cycle, I think the evaluation was that UK science had done quite well, both in terms of research and the communication piece. But subsequent to that, there seems to have been an effort to kind of rewrite history around COVID. To say that, you know, the lockdown was unnecessary, wearing of masks was unnecessary. And you seem to see a little bit in internet circles, kind of a conspiracy theories emerging that seek to not kind of challenge so much the data of science, but to kind of challenge the reality of science. And I just wondered, how does the science workforce kind of engage with a set of people that won't even accept the kind of existence of science as a superstructure that has its own scepticism built into it?
Where to start with that?
Julie, yeah. I think it probably falls.
Did I mention COVID? Yes, there's so many themes there. I mean, as an institute, we pivoted during COVID and offered our services to government, and that's been, some of the most extraordinary conversations I've ever had. Just, can you make this sequencing thing go quicker? You're like, well, not really. It takes, there's chemistry that needs to happen, and then you get data, and that data needs to be interpreted. Just to say, it was a registered scientist that refined the methodology that we used and reduced the time. So again, oh gosh, how do we deal with the
heretics?
Yeah. If you know how to engage with that part of the community that completely disregards science, do let us know, because we struggle immensely. And we go to science festivals and we're talking to people that are already on the bus. We don't know how to engage that minority population. And when you're talking about health, genetics and inheritance, it gets really, really tricky. It gets even more difficult, and so I have to say we're not shying away from that, but we haven't got specific outreach to the harder to reach communities. That's not a great answer. That's not going to pass on.
I don't have a great answer to this one either. And I'm not sure that we ever will have a proper answer, because I think it ebbs and flows. As scientists, we are part of society. Society is rich and varied. It's not homogeneous. As individuals, we don't. We may say things as scientists in our professional roles, but not necessarily act upon those in our home lives. Like organisation, talk a lot about sustainability, talk a lot about climate. To a good number of my colleagues jump in a car to do a 4-mile journey to work. And then we'll talk about climate change for the rest of the day. So there's all that suite of interactions, and trust, as you rightly said earlier, Juliet, ebbs and flows. As scientists during the COVID era, that specific lockdown phase, there was a collective effort to give the best advice that could be given on the best available data, best available evidence. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, and this is the final word on the matter. So communication is difficult, and I think there's a societal expectation of absolute certainty when scientists speak. And as scientists, we all know that there is no absolute truth in science. We can get close to truth, but there's always an element of uncertainty. And that's the bit that we're really conveying, I think, to the wider society, to politicians, and whoever we need to get our messages across to.
I'm going to ask you this really quick. I've asked you before about have you used the toilet in terms of relating to whether or not you are on a water cycle. It's communicating with people at that level and finding areas of shared experience and then building from there.
Thank you. I think a general problem is that probably often wants, and the politicians want to say yes or no answer, black and white. And as a scientist, we don't do black and white. That's just a dark shade of grey. That's just
I don't know why there's 2 microphones here. There must be a reason behind it. Science would tell me. My name's John Lowe. I'm a chartered engineer on council for IMechE and some other things. But I have a particular interest because I'm helped to run an industrial museum, and education is one of our highlights. We've won the IMechE, Institute of Mechanical Engineers, top award for what we do. This session is about professional registration, and I'm not happy with everything that I've heard. I think we're almost talking to, preaching to the converted here. What worries me is the younger generation and what motivates them to become STEM people, and whatever career that might be. And I suggest that my experience in the automotive industry is quite relevant. I've worked for a major global authority for most of my career. I've done other things too. And the companies universally have not focused on having chartered membership as a requirement for their development engineers. It's and I would voice it from Honda. We don't need people to become chartered engineers. Our training is sufficient. We are interested in the company first, and chartered membership only has become more popular recently, particularly because of a push from this country, I have to say. I'm not sure that view that I just expressed from Honda still applies. So I would like to see our efforts here today encourage more young people to be interested in becoming STEM career people, and then becoming professionally registered can be down the road. Sort of defects we have, there's virtually no support for SMEs. You want to take on an apprentice and it's a bloody nightmare. We've been trying to do so for the museum I run, and it just isn't worth the effort. We'd need whole-time people to do it. Many of the schemes that encourage STEM are short-term, they don't have longevity, they don't have the depth. We've been pushing at STEM for 20, 30 years, and we haven't really moved the needle. So I suggest that our focus on this conference would be much more helpful if we plug the gap of the 700,000 people that have just been mentioned as short in our future needs, or as even as Screwfix said on the Radio 4 this morning, 700,000 people that were short of in the skilled trades, the technicians. Thank you. Sorry about the rant.
No, thank you very much for the rant. I'd say at the end of the day, I'm only going to say I agree with a lot of the comments. Preaching to the converted, I think that was a phrase I used shortly before this meeting. And I think some of the talk I was having with Jane earlier was about, I've got 3 children. I couldn't be interested in science or engineering. So I completely agree. But looking for comments from the panel there. Anybody want to pick that one up to start off with? Go on.
So I agree with much of what you said as well. And I think, so this conference is valuable already, in my view, because one of the things it's surfacing is actually that the traditional routes through university, etc., are perhaps not always the routes that we need to be focusing on now.
Agreed.
And I think that's a message that's already started to come out of this. My father worked in the automotive industry all his life. One of the differences between me and my father is that my career, unlike his, hasn't necessarily been linear, and I think that's an increasingly common phenomenon. So people work for an organisation for a period, because as somebody was saying earlier, they want to make a difference, but they're interested in the issue, not necessarily who they're working for in that sense. So the loyalty isn't to the company. In that respect, I think registration is valuable, and to be able to give people a path to chartership, whether it be through apprenticeships or whatever the route is. I think the entry points. Chartership enables their mobility to develop their careers in a way that they value and want, that is speaking to their personal value set, not necessarily the value set of a company.
I think because we started to push time, I'm just going to ask if there's any one last quick question And he's looking for a quick answer from the panel as well.
Oh. No, that's my answer.
I think that's quite an easy question. I think we all generally probably agree that, registration, professional registration is a good thing. I was just interested to know what proportion of your eligible workforce is actually take up the opportunity, and what are the barriers to those that decide not to, or what are the barriers generally?
Okay, I'll start at this end this time.
So proportion, we're at the beginning of our journey, so I'd say it's a small proportion, probably less than 100 out of those 700 potentials, so not great. What are the barriers? It is time, it's the demands on our scientists. Being in science is very different to how it was 5 or even 10 years ago. The amount of regulation, training that needs done, and the time is the biggest killer of innovation in our sector.
So to quickly answer that, so it's 10% in my organisation. I've only been close to a little over 6 months, and I'm proud to be able to say that I've increased it from 6% to 10% in that period of time. And yeah, just to echo the points made here, it's time is a big challenge, but also institutional support. And my personal case, I'm driving that quite hard and improving structures to enable that.
Great question. I had slides I painted yesterday which actually illustrated this particular point, all of which I forgot because I'm not particularly remember. But broadly speaking, my organisation, 15% of members are registered, and that goes with all 9 flavours I mentioned to you before. In terms of the pool, though, the way that I can I just see? Sorry.
Yeah, it's really odd.
I'm more used to projecting my voice this way. So simply speaking, I enunciate that registration is a standard of how you work, qualifications of what you do, and at an ICE meeting there was a chap there who said employers want technical competence from their employees. What institutes bring is professional commitment, and trying to use that as an educational tool is our challenge.
Thank you. But I would just add that I think in our organisation it is over 20%. And as we're in the IOP today, I would probably just add as an example, we have 400 members of the Institute of Physics on site. And to the population of about 650, 700 physicists. So in areas like that, it's a very high membership level. Yeah. Right, I believe we're running out of time, and before long, Tom's going to drag me by the ankles and pull the microphone away. So, if you could thank our panel again for this discussion this morning, Mr. Julia, and Rob, and I believe we have completed this, and it's back to the main auditorium, so I have a run down the stairs. We'll take it. It should be easy going down and coming down. Thank you very much to you as well.
Thank you.